Well, good morning from Copenhagen, Denmark. I am just walking here next to the Rosenborg slot, heading to Norreport station. So it's Monday morning today, Halloween 2022. And this is Rosenborg slot, or Rosenborg Castle. You can see it's pretty foggy this morning here in Copenhagen. Hopefully that doesn't affect my sightseeing too much today. Yeah, that is one of Denmark's most famous castles here, right in the heart of Copenhagen, Rosenborg slot. So before I head back to Canada, I want to take a trip here around the Øresund, which is the massive sound that separates Denmark from Sweden. There are a lot of interesting cities and towns along the way. My first stop is going to be the historic town of Helsingor, which is right at the north end of Sealand Island here in Denmark. So there is a lot of history there. It's home to the famous Hamlet Castle, which sounds really interesting. So I'm going to catch a train here this morning and head up to Helsingor. All right, after a short 45-minute trip up the coast of Zealand, I've arrived here in Helsingor. Helsingor is a historic city. It has cobblestone streets, and it is home to the very famous Kronborg slot, which is also called the Hamlet Castle. Figured I'd take a peek at that and then make my way across the Øresund into Sweden, which is just a short 20-minute ferry ride away from here. So this ticket cost me, I believe, 96 kroner all the way to Sweden, including the stop here. So that's, just about 18 bucks Canadian. As you can see, this is the stunning Helsingor train station. Beautiful brick building right here on the waterfront overlooking the Øresund. So it's a pretty charming place, as you can see. You got a flower market that they're setting up here and really beautiful old town buildings. A lot of history here in Helsingor. So one thing that you'll notice immediately upon leaving Copenhagen is that the prices get a lot cheaper. So I just paid 20 kroner for a coffee that at the same store would cost 30 in Copenhagen. So it's definitely one of the pleasures in life to wander the cobblestone streets of a medieval town in Northern Europe. And you can see right there, a lot of history here. That building right there is very Baltic. It reminds me of what I encountered in Gdansk and in Lübeck in Germany. And right over here, this historic building, now serving as a cafe and maybe a residence, but beautiful yellow colored, almost like Hanseatic architecture. Though I'm no architecture expert, so don't quote me on that. But as you can see, there's a lot of medieval history here in Helsingor, and that is because this city was of great strategic importance in the medieval era. It basically acted as the fortress on the northwest corner of the Øresund. And this very impressive red brick building is the Helsingor Rådhus, or City Hall. And this reminds me a lot of what you'd expect to find in Kiel and Lübeck and Rostock. Very similar architecture to northern Germany, and likely given its proximity just a few hours away. Definitely has a beautiful old town here. Highly worth the day trip if you're in the Copenhagen area. Only 45 minutes from Copenhagen Central. And I just saw this little info board behind me. So these houses are called the Sound Dues residences. So they're merchant houses from a time when Helsingor was flush with the profits of international trade. So it says for a time, this was actually Denmark's second largest city from the 1500s. It's pretty crazy. Beautiful murals everywhere. And you can see tons of references to the Shakespearean play Hamlet. That is because Helsingor is basically the home of Hamlet in the play. Kronborg Castle, that's right over here on the coast, is considered to be Hamlet's castle. So very interesting. And I just stumbled upon this very cool mural depicting Helsingor back in its heyday during the medieval period. So you can see traders and ships coming to port and the Kronborg castle right there on the coast at the entrance to the Øresund. Really cool mural. I just stumbled upon it randomly. And right behind it is the Domkirke, or the Sankt Olai's church, which is very reminiscent of the church styles that you'll see along the north coast of Germany and I guess Poland as well, the Baltic area. And some information over here. Looks like it got its present look back in 1559, so it's 450th anniversary of the present building, but the oldest parts of the church wall are from the 13th century, so the 1200s. Even a small town in Denmark that, most people have not heard of has so much history. It's unbelievable. Very cool. After a nice walk through Old Town, I've made it right down here to the waterfront in Helsingor with gorgeous views of the Kronborg Castle right across from me. And that is one of the most historic castles here in Denmark from the medieval era. So you can see again, oxidized green spires. There's a bit of scaffolding on it right now due to restoration, but otherwise a very beautiful old castle here right on the north coast of Denmark with sweeping views across the Øresund into Sweden. This is actually pretty much the closest that you can get, the most narrow part of the Øresund. So Sweden is only 5 kilometers away right there. Really gorgeous day too. It's a bit overcast, but really pleasant temperatures and very, very little wind. I'm gonna soak this up for a while. And there is the ferry heading back over from Helsingborg, Sweden, where I'm heading very shortly here. It looks like this ferry leaves every 20 to 30 minutes or so it shouldn't be too hard of a problem to get across. And it costs €7 to cross the Øresund. So I'm just sitting down to a coffee here at this really cute cafe. This is the Cafe Karisma, right across from the Rådhus here in Helsingor. Beautiful place. All right, I spent way too long in that cafe, but at least I got some work done. It's getting dark though, so I'm gonna get to the boat here so I can at least see something of this voyage. Probably have about 25 minutes of daylight left. And there again is Helsingor Station, which is really beautiful. All right, everybody, let's go to Sweden. Here goes nothing. All right, the ferry is pulling in. All right, boarding the ferry to Helsingborg, Sweden. Looks like we got a little cafeteria here. It's a very short trip though, so I don't know how long, it's like 20 minutes. Better eat fast, I guess. And gift shop. Little casino. It's actually a pretty comfortable ferry. They probably have more than they need for a 20-minute trip. They even have a little self-service booth here where you can kind of pay on the honor system here. All right, we are moving. We are pulling out of dock here, and that in the distance is Helsingborg, Sweden. Pretty cool. This was actually cheaper than just going to Helsingør, Denmark. The ticket to Helsingør, Denmark from Copenhagen is 110 krone. This was only 96, including the ferry. So go figure. I don't know how that works. But we are pulling out of Helsingør. Goodbye, Denmark. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this tour of Helsingør, Denmark. Very beautiful city. Definitely check it out if you ever are in the area. If you're in Copenhagen, take a day trip up. 45 minutes, well worth it.